Welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we embrace open dialogue from different perspectives about entrepreneurship, relationships, and education.
And this open dialogue is needed, especially today, as we live in a Twitter finger society where everyone seems to care more about getting their point across than they are about hearing the other person's perspective.
If you're ready to grow your business, your relationships, and your personal development, stick with us here at the Perspective Podcast, because sometimes in life, to get to the next level, you just need a different perspective.
If I look like what I've been through, I'd be roadkill. Tell me off of the pavement, I'm reeking from the...
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Perspective Podcast. I see Mouzon got T here with me. Say what's up, T.
What's going on, family? Bang, bang. Bang, bang.
We're back with the bang, bang. It's going to be a staple, guys. Get used to it. If you're only listening to us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're listening to us, you might want to get over to our YouTube and check out the video, because you got to see this bang bang in action. You got to see the bang bang.
That sounds terrible. You got to see this bang bang in action. Oh God.
Maybe that'll draw some people in. So they wanna,
I know that got to be a clip. We gonna snip that one. Come see this bang bang in action. They're gonna be like, "Oh, what's this about?"
That's merch right there. That's a sweater. That's a hoodie.
I got somebody. You know what? I think I might go get somebody. My boy Lamar and his wife. They're gonna do that for us. They'll do that.
Let's do it. Let's get the merch game. But thank you for everybody that's listening. Again, we're excited. This is going to be a great episode. I really feel like for all of you listening, you guys are going to get so much value from this, and we're going to take it personal, right? Like it's not often that you hear T and I kind of go into our own personal stories. You'll hear us here and there, right? Like touch on things with our family or things with our work, but we don't really dive in. And T made a big life decision, man. He made a huge life decision. He transitioned workplaces, and we're going to get into a little bit of his story and kind of why that happened. But on this episode, I really just want to dive in and give you the mindset. If you guys, for those of you that have been listening to us for some time, right, you go back to, I don't know, episode 3, 4, something along those lines.
Yeah, it might have been 2. Like it was early.
Might have been 2. It was real early.
Yeah.
But T and I had this conversation between about the intrapreneur and the entrepreneur, right? And how those things, what they actually are. Me, all entrepreneurship, right? You got to go out and make it happen yourself. Mm-hmm. And then T brings the perspective of the intrapreneur side, like, hey, you can work in a company and still influence, still make adjustments, still maneuver like an entrepreneur just inside of a company. I didn't believe that was the case, right? To a degree, still don't, but it's okay. We're a little bit closer to finding out the answer.
We're both like moved to the other side, right? Like you came over here a little bit, and I walked across the stage the other way.
Exactly. Hey, that's what happens when you get the perspectives, though, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you get different perspectives. So today, let's dive in a bit, T, because I want you to be able to tell the people where you just came from. You were just in to what most would say, a good job, right? Like a good, stable company position.
Put your feet up,
right? Worked your way up. Got to a 6-figure position, crushing it, right? Doing all those things, and you chose to leave. So let's just start with some of the early stage things, right? So you can talk about the company. The company was Drive Time, right? Whether you know the company or not, or feelings about the company, whatever the case is, but that's where T was. And talk to me about kind of coming into that first and foremost, right? Stepping into that world. What were your thoughts, feelings as the employee in that space?
Well, it was good, man. I mean, it was, I had worked at, the largest rental car company on the planet. Y'all can figure that out before. So I was already versed for corporate, right? Like, I mean, I was already prepared, if you will, for corporate America. The politics that came along with corporate America, the understanding of how, the carrot and the stick, if you will, right? The different motivational factors, the reward system for doing better and rank and moving up and essentially creating your own growth opportunities, right? Like that's the sell, right? Creating your own growth opportunities. How many people are you developing under you? And there's plenty of people, right? I mean, you're talking thousands of employees all across America, et cetera, et cetera. So you can move around, travel, do whatever you need to do to have that opportunity. So it was good. I mean, it was one of the best experiences of my life, right? And it was one of the more challenging experiences of my life professionally and personally. And so it was like these things were colliding, and I learned a lot about myself. Like, man, people, look, when you work in corporate, and especially if you can get yourself, I called it out of the store or out of the everyday, if you will, right? Where you're not necessarily the first person the customer sees. It's a different kind of world. It's like leaving planet Earth and then you getting into outer space and you're like, yo, it's different out here. Like, you know what I mean? It's different out here.
Talk about some of those challenges. Talk about your story. Like you're starting in the store, right? You're starting as you started as a GM with Drive Time. Right?
Yeah, I came in. So it was during it was a program that they had, right? And I was like a rare group of people, to be frank. And that's not like I'm great, but it's just there's other people that's been grinding from like the bottom, right? Like if you will, right? And working their way up. And I was able to come in because the company is just growing, right? Massively. And this is one of those things, companies grow, they got to figure out how to bring in talent while they're still nurturing talent sometimes. And every company has these type of things end up happening. It's like a balance of new people, new ideas, while still working through your own vineyard, if you will. And so started right off, like, I mean, just the thought of like, you're going to be responsible for a brand new 10, 20, almost $30 million location, and you've never done the work before, you know what I mean, in your life. And you got to go through like boot camp for 6 months to not only learn the operations, learn the business, learn it all, but then also adapt your natural ability to lead and be able to connect it to and hit the gate running. Because in corporate America, there ain't a lot of like, let's figure this out. Like a lot of money has been spent, millions of dollars of new locations, etc. So you got to hit the ground running. So it's a lot of pressure, right? It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of long hours. Like, I mean, I used to work anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a day most of the year. Like no questions asked. Like I mean, we talked before and it'd be like
no overtime pay, right?
Oh, there's no overtime pay. No, what are you talking about? We're on a salary. This ain't California, right? I was not in California, so there is no overtime pay. And in California, if you're on salary, you can do some things. I know somebody's gonna be like, but I'm on salary in California. It's a different position, right? But no, like no overtime. So you were expected to, hey, you got to be prepared for the team, be prepared for the customer. And then whenever that last customer leave, you're there with them until. And then you got to wrap up, safeguard everything, and come back again. There were plenty of nights where I got in at 7:30 because I like to get in early. We opened at 9. The team got in at 8:30-ish. So I like to get in before them. So I'm prepped, right? Or maybe I had some training to do with somebody. And then I left at 2 a.m. Like that wasn't even like a every now and then. That was kind of often. Yeah. At least midnight for sure.
And that again speaks to you grinding and being that employee that takes pride in his work and takes pride in the numbers and takes pride for his store and his people. You were always that way in the corporate structure.
You have to be. Like, I mean,
Well, you don't have to be because you could suck, right? Like people suck in corporate, right? They're not that way.
Yeah, you want to stand out, right? And this is where it gets challenging in corporate, and it's just not where I was just at. It's just in general, right? Like there comes a point of where you kind of like, man, I'm like working, and then it's like, okay, what am I like? What's coming back for all the input, right? Like, or like if you're inputted in, like what's coming back? And people don't like. I've led a lot of teams, right? And people I don't think recognize or realize like the balance between the input and the output and how to assess that. Sure. Right. I used to tell my team all the time, I said, look, this is not, this ain't Terell time. Like, this ain't my deal. Right. And I said, and then one day when that input and output don't equal up the right way, like, I got to, like, this deuces. Like, I'm 100%, like, if we're talking about sports, like, I'm going to be the best. And then when I realize I can't be that best no more, I'm not probably going to be Vince Carter. I'm not going to ride out and be the supportive guy on the bench on a losing team. I'm going to go all the way, and then I'm just retiring. Right? I'm just to a stop. You still got something in the tank. Not for this.
and again, me knowing you, like, that's how you operate it, right? Like, I'm gonna get into that in a little bit, because I think it was a pivotal moment when we brought the families over and we were having a conversation in our living room, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to get to that, but before we get to that part, like, talk about kind of working all those hours, doing all the things, getting the promotion, right?
Yeah.
Getting the promotion.
Yeah.
And then what comes with the promotion? Like, what did you see? Because again, think of these listeners, right? That's the trajectory they're on. They're grinding, they're doing all the things so they can get the promotion and get to the next level and get to the 6-figure and get to, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what did you see when it happened? Because I know we've had stories and conversations, right? Like, just about the person, the people, how it changes. But talk about that stuff and like what you had to go through with that.
What people have to realize is this, and I say this to everybody. It's a book called What Got You Here Will Get You There, right? As you are navigating the landscape, right? And there's a performance, like what goes on the books. There's a people, how are people assessing you, right? Like your people, how are your people assessing you? Then there's another segment of how your leadership is assessing and where they believe you are. And the game shifts as you continue to matriculate through this company, right? Or not that company, but any company. And you have to understand that that's the game that's happening. See, the first big corporation that I worked for, I didn't understand the game. I was sold it's based on your merit. That's it. That it's your merit. And then when I looked at my merit, I looked at my performance, I looked at my people, and I lined it up against the person that they promoted. And then they put their arm around me and said, hey, it's just like that. And I was like, and this was the first company, I was like, what you talking about, bro? You said to me, I'm very literal, right? Like, to a fault at times. You said it's merit-based, performance-based. You said I rocked it. You said I did this. You said I did that. And now you're telling me, yes, the other person wasn't as good, didn't have the numbers, blah, 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 blah. And it's not them. It's not you, it's them. Like, I quit. Like, like, I'll be honest, like, I quit.
Welcome to corporate. These were the conversations that we used to have all the time. And like, it'd be like, they sell you one thing, and then the other thing happens, and then you're just supposed to take it. Like, that's the game. Like,
that's the game, but that's not the game, right? So that was the first time. So now this time, I started seeing that happen. I didn't quit because I said, no. This is the game. Like, and so this is what I'm trying to tell you is you're trying to move up. You got to play the game. You got to understand the game. And every company has its own game, whether they want to say to you or not. Now, some people's game is close to what's written. Like, that's true. There are some companies' game that is very close to what's written. However, there's also typically another game. And just as well as you are trying to be the best at what you can be at your position and amongst your peers and amongst your leadership, you must also understand the game behind the game. And you got to be able to play that game to have the ultimate success. Anybody that tells you anything else is lying. Like, let me just be straight up with you. It's lying. And the reason why it's lying, it's not because they don't actually believe that, because I believed it at one point, right? But it's human nature. We're tribal. right? I remember calling my my mentor, right? My mentor, she's, one of my professors from my undergraduate program. And she said, shout out to J Woo Miami. Just, throw that out there.
Yeah.
Right?
The send off, man. The camp is closed.
I know, man. The camp is closed. How that work? Did my student loans go away now?
I know, right? I don't think they took those away.
But I remember she said, she goes, yeah, Terell, that makes total sense to me what they're doing. And I was like, but they're picking people that's not as good. And she had to remind me, she goes, Terell, I would do the same thing. She was like, when you're in a leadership position and you're responsible for a multi-billion-dollar company, you're going to pick your people. They were like, look at the election. Does Donald Trump not going to pick his people? Is Biden not going to pick his people? Now, I'm using Biden now. That was a long time ago, but whoever was president at the time, right? It's like, they're going to pick their people. It's the same thing. So you, as an employee, have to understand there is another game. And if you want to move up, you need to ensure you are one of those people. Sometimes being one of those people is having more personal conversations with your boss, getting to know them, and still performing, right? Like you want to be, your performance is just nothing but the resume, right? Like that's like, ooh, this person looks good. It's the relationship is like the interview. And that's where people need to understand as you're moving up. So I'm moving up and then I get out of what I call the store, right? So I'm no longer running a store. I'm no longer, 12 to 15 hours a day. I now I'm at a position where I'm working 8 hours, but in reality, like you're not actively working for 8 hours anymore, right? And I'm not saying nothing anybody knows. Everybody knows the district managers, area managers, people that are kind of like right outside the store. They're not consistently doing something every time, right? Because there's a lot of reports, there's meetings, there's recaps of meetings and stuff like that. It's just not forward facing. You can do a lot of work, especially if you're training and developing, if you're heavy into that. But for the most part, you can maneuver your schedule a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But here comes the game. Because you're not so much customer facing, now the game becomes totally different. Now the company is now looking at you saying, it ain't even about the numbers while the numbers are important. It's what are you doing for the company? It's like, what are you talking about? These numbers ain't for the company. Last time I checked this equal blah, 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 billions of dollars. Like, no. How are you adding like more value to the company? And then that value now you have to understand comes through the relationships that you can build with executives, upper management to understand their vision and their plans, and how can you bring solutions to the problems that they casually tell you. That's a different game.
That's a completely different game.
That's a different game.
But it's just the truth, right? It's 1,000% true.
And I've watched people stick with the in the store mentality and get passed over by the people who were not as good in the store. But because they were in the executive ear, in the upper management's ear, understanding their vision, and then providing solutions, whether directly or indirectly, being like, oh, that's my guy, that's my girl, that's my guy, that's my girl. Completely different. While other people are like in the field hustling, and getting passed over.
Don't even know the game, right?
Like they don't know the game.
You're saying so many things. And again, like I said, we talked about this just before we started recording.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a conversation we normally have on the phone, right? Like,
this
is just a talk.
This is corporate. This is the corporate talk right now.
This is the corporate talk, right? Like
trying to help y'all.
This is it. Like, again, I've said this a bunch. Tia's telling it to you now. Like, if you want to win, you got to understand the game you're playing.
Yes.
That's first and foremost. If you are in corporate America and you are trying to climb the ladder, right? If that is your goal, because this is what you've been prepped to do, right? Go to school, get good grades, get some higher education, get a good job, climb the corporate ladder, get to a six-figure position, put your feet up, retire with right? That's the goal. If you're retired, right, doing it, then you got to know the game. The game that T just told you, right, in the store is making sure that you're doing all the things. You're working the extra hours. You're putting in the time. You're standing out. You're right, getting there.
You're developing people around you. Everybody around you getting developed.
All of it. You're doing it. It still doesn't mean you're the one that they're going to pick, but you still got to play the game, right?
Yes.
You still got to do it. It's the reason I hated, right, corporate. The reason I hated it is because from a restaurant management side, I would watch people, other managers just like me in my same position, probably made more money than me, but was way worse, like less guest skills, right? Like less personal skill, like just way, but like they would get the promotion. They would get the advantage. They would get that stuff. And I learned the game. I just didn't want to play it anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want, this is not the game I want to play. Like if that's the way it works, great for you guys. That's all well and good. I don't want to play this game.
Yeah. And you get to that point.
That's it.
And that's the point where you get, right? And I think that leads to that segue, right? Like
before we get to that, but before we get to
that
segue, because right, this is just again showing people the game.
Yes.
That then when you did get that promotion, when you're out of the store now, one of the things you said to me that stuck with me, and I've told people this, is like when you go from a peer group of 80 to a peer group of 15 or 16, right? The whole deal changes. The whole deal changes. And I remember you and I having conversations when that happened. And yes, it's exciting. And yes, it comes with some more responsibility. It comes with a pay bump and like all those things are great. Yeah. But then it came with challenges. And I want you to talk on the challenges and some of the things that like you didn't expect that really was like, hey, I don't know if this is where I want to be. Right. What are some of those things that you saw that were happening to you to start to really have that understanding?
Now, some of this is like I will say it's a personal preference, right? I want to put that out there, right? Because this is where you really start finding out about you, right? Like you really like when you get to the place that you wanted to get to, and then you're like, what's next? That it's a time for more self-reflection at that point in time, right? Like that's when you kind of go in because you got to where one of your big goals, right? Now, obviously, I had goals past that, right? But you hit that milestone, and you're like, that's what I'm talking about. What happens is, and this is my perspective on it, is when you go from 140 or whatever to 15 or 19. And you're new, it's different, right? Like it's different. And you would think to stand out amongst 140 is harder because of the volume of people than standing out amongst 19. And that's just not true, right? It's just not true. It's like going to being great in college, but then going to the NBA and being the best. Less people, less teams, less coaches, and it takes all of this to stand out. And so then I got that's when that challenge happened again, which is, well, how do you stand out now amongst 19, right? But then how do you not just stand out, but how does that stand out translate to more?
Exactly. Right?
There's two different things again. You can stand out and it not translate to new goals that you set for yourself. This is where one or two people's voices speak even louder now when it comes to making moves. And that was, I think, the most challenging thing, because you think, all right, I'm amongst 140, somebody says something, but when you get out of that store and now you're dealing directly with the people who are strategizing that run a multi-billion-dollar company, you have to be on your game because you get less time with them. You're responsible for a whole lot of stuff. Now, mind you, I got all these people that I'm responsible for, right? Like that got to be in order. And if any of that is out of order, they just looking at the number. Right. right? Like they just looking at the number. So you got to make sure this is in order, all 100 people you got or 50 people or whatever that is, while still being able to get in the other ear, right? I used to have people tell me all the time, like, hey man, certain people you just got to call every month. Like, and I'm like, what you talking about? I'm like, they're like, no, you just got to call them every month. Like you need to call them. Like your career depends on you calling them.
gotta learn the game.
And I'm like, and I was at first, I was like, man, look, bro, I'm focused right now. Like, I just gotten this. I went from having 22 employees to 70 employees. Like, I'm like, bro, I didn't triple my employees, and they're like, you messing up, dog. Like, you need to get in their ear. And I was being stubborn, but then I looked around. I started looking at the people, and I was like, man, dang, why they ask them to do that project? Like, dang, they on another project. I mean, they got more stores than I do. How they on that project and how they on that? And then I came to find out they was doing the, hey, how's it going? Everything's great, man. How was this? How was that? Okay, good. Oh, would you say you had a problem? I'll help, right? I'll help. Oh, my stores are great. Don't worry about it. Everything's good. I got the bandwidth. And then somebody else, hey, oh, you need help too? I got it. And it's a different game. Yeah. I watch literally people struggle in their core job, right? I'm like, I'm giving game right now. Like, if y'all ain't catching this, I watch people struggle in their core job, working on other jobs, and then be viewed as, I don't want to say superior, I don't think that's the right word, as more valuable than others. Mm-hmm. And then I watch people crush it in their core, be the best in their core for months, if not years, and not get the same looks as somebody else who wasn't performing at the core position. Now, some people may be on this podcast and be like, listening and being like, oh, that's just a messed up organization or whatever. It's not.
Across the board.
It's across the board. One thing I will say is, while I didn't always be able to practically do certain things, I always paid attention. Chris and I came up in restaurants, right? Like, he kept going. I used it as just like my job to get ultimately, just through college, I needed money, but I worked my way up. I worked for some of the largest restaurant chains, right? Luxury and like fast casual. If I said some of the names, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know them. And I got to management even there. It's the same deal. I've been hearing this thing since 19 years old. It just finally clicked at 32 because I thought the world was fair, and the world is not fair. And because the world isn't fair, and I knew, it as a Black man, the world ain't fair, but then you think you get certain environments in the 21st century and it's going to be fair, and it's not. And I also dealt with that, not at my last company, not the bigger companies, but other companies where being Black was you got a ceiling, bro. Like, it's hard ceiling, and I'm gonna tell you to your face, right? So I've dealt with all of it, and this was like a company trying to be corporate, right? Like trying to be a more corporate organization. So it's the same thing. So I'm hopefully somebody's listening. If you're in corporate America and you're trying to work your way up, there's two games. It's the game that you're paid to do, and there's a subconscious cultural game that you got to learn and you got to understand. And you got to master that game too. Anybody tell you it's not like that is lying to you. Let me just be 100% real with you.
They are lying to you. Corporate, and this is what once I learned it, that's why I said, once I learned it, I stopped wanting to play the game. It didn't matter what company, go to this restaurant, go to that one. It's all the same thing. You continue to climb the ladder, and you have to do your job well, and you have to kiss ass well. You got to do both, right? Yeah, you're not going to be able to get there. You got to know how to maneuver in those walls of the corporate structure that you're in, right? Yeah,
and sometimes it's different, right? And I will say, some companies you don't see this until you get like higher. Like, so, exactly. Some companies, most people will never know that exists.
That's right.
right? Like that's real talk. Like some companies, you see it at supervisor level on the ground. Some companies, it takes you to be an executive to see that take place.
That's why I said, if this is your goal to climb the ladder, you're going to be faced with this.
You're going to hit it.
The higher up you go, the more you're going to run into it, right?
Yeah.
The more you're going to run into it, the more you get into that smaller and smaller peer group, the more you have a target on your back, the more people get stingy, the more people don't want to give you information, right? The more like now they don't want you to move ahead of them, right? The difference in, just outsider looking into your situation too, at, your previous company, is you get to this certain level. Now your peer group is 15, 19 people. They know how to play the game well also. Like, just like your analogy where you said like going from college to the NBA, you're not just going to be the best in college and then go be the best in the NBA, because they know how to play the game. They know how to train. They know how to do that stuff. Now
they're already champions.
They're already champions. They've already been there, right? And so you get in a peer group of guys, they've been with the company 15 years, 17 years, right? Like they know the game. But because of that, they're also not going to let you pass them up. That's the other side. And people don't understand that the higher up you go. I learned that lesson a long time ago, that like you keep climbing this ladder, you're going to stop at some point because there's going to be somebody that doesn't want to get out of that seat. And the only way that you get that seat is if they get out of that seat.
It's musical chairs, bro. Like at the end of the musical chairs, there's only one chair left.
Only one chair left.
It's only one chair left.
Only one chair left. And it is survival. And if that's how you want to live your life in corporate, right? Like keep climbing it, keep playing the game.
And some people might be okay getting out when there's 3 chairs left. Yeah. And I'm not, and again, that's why I started this off with, you get to a personal preference, right? Like you get to this place, right? Like I was looking at this opportunity of saying, hey, my family dynamic and just like how things are structured, I can't go 100% entrepreneur right now. Whether that's true or that's just my belief system, it is what it is.
Sure.
So I said, but there's a lot of value, and I can see that being valuable of being that entrepreneur. And we talked about it. I'm like, hey, I think I can figure a way to make this happen, whether I move up or not. What I learned was that, yes, that's true in corporate, but the higher you got to get up to start having that have more weight to it. And that's just the reality of it, right? Like that's the hard part. Mm-hmm. You got to get high up enough where you can get in the right people's ear to hear you about, all right, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's spend 10 million on that. Right? Like,
mm-hmm. You're right.
That's just where it's actually,
it's actually the CEO's decision. It's the people in power's decision. And that's why I was always like, I don't think you can be the entrepreneur, because it always, like, you don't make the decision until you sit in that seat. Like you technically never get the chance to make the decision you want to make. You're like, and I've seen
you're influencing the decision maker.
Right. That's it. Like, but like,
that's it.
You'll see things at your level and be like, man, I want to change this. As the entrepreneur, I'm like, I'm changing that, right? It's done. Like, I'm just going to flip this, and because I think it's going to be better. When you're in the corporate structure and you're trying to be the entrepreneur, you might still see the change. You might still be innovative enough to be like, ooh, if we did this, but you still have to go present that idea to someone else who has to make the decision.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's always the way it's going to be until you sit in that seat. And so that's why I was like, I don't know that this is a game that you can win. And to be honest, we started having a conversation, and there was some things on your side where you were like, where there was a lot.
You can't. It's the vehicle. It's like, how do I want to say? It's like you're driving. You want to get to Cuba. You driving through Florida, and you're gonna hit the water, and you got a car.
Right.
Right. Like now, if you're willing to wait and transition to a boat. Right now, you get to Cuba, that's doable. But if you're like, hey, I want to use this car, and let's say this car is entrepreneurship, and you're not willing to go to the boat, which is corporate head and just thinking corporate and kind of, playing the game, right? Of whatever game that is. Some games, again, is doing your damn job the best way possible. Like, you know what I mean? And being the excellence of your job. That's some companies, that's the game, and you play it and it works well because that's kind of what you paid to do, right? But then there's other companies on the other extreme, which my company wasn't the other extreme. It's the game of who likes you and who doesn't like you, right? Are you in the good old boys club? So I said to myself, I said, hey, you know what? There's some things that I wanted to do, and I saw. And I went and said, hey, I would like to change positions. I realized my skill set is suited best for X, Y, and Z. What I'm doing now, I'm doing well at. I got another promotion, right? I was like, I'm doing well at. I'm taking on more stores. I'm making more money. I'm doing all these things. I'm getting acknowledged, blah, 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 blah. My review was great. My reviews are great at this point, right? I said, but I'm self-assessing and I need to scratch this itch. And this is a frontier at the company that hasn't really been visited in a certain way. So for me, I was like, I can take that entrepreneur and plug it into this frontier that the company is saying it's important. And then it can feel like a whole new thing because the department hasn't been grown yet, you know? So I'm like, I could just kind of get in another little mini company in there. But then corporate, hey man, Terell, that sounds great. However, only way for you to do that is you got to move to the West Coast again.
You got to change your whole life for us again.
And I'm like, but we work in a virtual world. How is this not possible? Right? Like, and it's like, no, well, for that position, the way we envision it, which is fair, right? That's the vision of that managing, director or whatever executive, right? Then you have to move. So then you're stuck. Do I want to uproot again, playing the game? Now, mind you, let's put context to it. I moved 1, 2, 3 times already in 6 years. 6 years. In 6 years, I moved my family cross country, central country, back over country.
Being a great employee, right? Like being the guy, like that again.
Playing the game. That was part of playing the game. I had to move.
That's right.
And when I got a rough reputation, the game was get the hell out of that area, move leadership, switch leadership to someone else who will value how you work differently, went different, and then boom, got promoted. Like, that's playing the game. That's how committed I was. I literally moved my family three times in 6 years, and I know people that will not move out of Long Beach, where I'm from. They still there. They still in Philly with your people. They will never leave. Like, that is just what they're doing. And in 6 years, and now mind you, it ain't just me moving with my wife. It's me and 3 kids.
Right.
Changing schools, talking my kids how to reestablish friends. My wife got to get new friends. Family's not around. Like, just chaos for playing the game, because the game provided for the family. That's, you know what I mean?
Right.
And me and my wife were willing to play the game, but when it came that time, we weren't going to play the game anymore. Right. We had to make the change.
That's it. And this is where, like I said, you came over, you and the family came over. I remember us having a good conversation, sitting on the couch, and what you had said kind of alluded to what you're saying, getting into this new position by self-assessing and saying, I'm really good with people, is what you said, right? Like, I'm really good with people. People is the passion. Like, that's really what I want to do. And you're at this corporate position that, again, the higher up you go, you start seeing, is this about people or is this about profit? Is this about our money? Is this about our dollars? Is this about the people, right?
Or just the process.
Yeah, or process,
like,
right? Exactly.
Like, what the hell we talking about? It's like Allen Iverson with practice. Like, if I hear the goddamn thing again, excuse
me.
Right?
For real though, like if we're talking about like what are we talking about here? And you get to that certain point where you realize, man, maybe this isn't worth it. Like, I'm trying to make a change. I feel this, like, this is my this is my gift. This is what I bring to the table. Once you realize, like, man, like, people love me. I'm a good communicator. I can do all these things.
Yeah.
But I'm in this role that it doesn't serve me to those things. So yes, I have the title that I've been asking for. Yes, I'm in the position, the secure position that everybody wants or whatever. Yes, I made it to six figures. Yes, I'm the company man, all that stuff, but it wasn't fulfilling.
No.
And you started to be like, if I'm going to make a change, I need to go somewhere that can scratch this itch, right?
Yeah, it turned from 80% when I first started was like scratching the itch. 20% wasn't. Then it flipped to 20% was scratching the itch, 80% wasn't. Probably 30-70 really.
Sure.
But then it became like, you got to be true to yourself. You got to be willing to have the courage to make an adjustment for what you know, and not look. I talk to so many people, not so many, but I talk to a lot of people that I trust and I'm close to. And I had people like, bro, you stupid. What you do every day? Like, is it, you know how to do it? Yeah. Like, yeah, I know how to do it. And you performing well? Yeah. And you ain't got to work that hard no more. I was like, yeah, they was like, man, I would have wrote that out till I retired. Like, you know, like that's the people was coming to me like, bro, you tripping. Everybody's trying to get to that. And then they're like, you're good enough to get to that next spot. And I'm like, yeah, in what, 10 years, maybe?
Right.
I don't know what the hell they're offering, like to 15 years. I'm looking around me and I'm seeing other people been sitting in this role for about 10 years. So who knows? And they way ahead of me, right? On knowledge and certain skills and stuff like that. And I said, nah, I needed to scratch this. More focus on the people, more like building something, entrepreneur feel. And so I remember sitting there talking with you, and we kind of like both kind of was like, you know, I probably just need to work for a smaller company.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I probably just need to go work next to an entrepreneur. I'll get all the scratchings, but he's taking all the risk still, or she's taking all the risk still. And then I can kind of groove my way in and maybe partner with them or go do my own thing after 3-4 years or whatever, right? As I'm still building my consulting thing on the side, right? I still have client now, like, you know, and as I'm doing different things. And so I said it, I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't like, you know, it's hard to like, just like, let go of like that I know what the hell I'm doing every day, right? It's kind of hard. And of course, when you want something in life, guess what happens? People reach out, you have a conversation. It checked every single box. This is the power of knowing what you want. Okay. When I got crystal clear about what I wanted to do, because I knew what I didn't want, and that's where most people leave it. They know what they don't want. But it wasn't until I got crystal clear. So this was months later, y'all. This wasn't like overnight. I decided no, this was months later. I'm like navigating through while still performing and playing the game as a just in case, right? Well, because you never know, it might not work out. And look, I'll give it a little sidebar. If you're ready to leave your job or you're thinking about it, don't start underperforming. Like, don't do that. You're going to mess yourself up, because what if it takes you a year or two to actually get something else? Now you put yourself in a position to lose additional money potentially over that time. Like, I'm just being real with you. If you're thinking about leaving, still give it 100%, because you might change your mind and then you be like, oh, I want to do this now. And now you're on the bad side of somebody's like their side. And now you can't even move up anymore because they're going to hold a grudge. And yes, people hold grudges. Like, absolutely, I've heard them say they hold grudges. I've had multiple people who were strategically involved in helping run parts of my area, my retail, explicitly tell me how they hold grudges.
Well, I mean, in business, at the end of the day, right? If someone's sabotaging your business or your department, or you're like, yeah, I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember that you tried.
And that was the word too. That's funny you say that. That was the word they used. Yeah. We'll remember that next time.
For real, like, it's because it's just true. Like, I've been in those positions where it's just like, I'm not gonna hire that person ever again. Like, look at what they did. Like, I would never do that. On the same token, though, what I always tell people is, if you do have to keep your job, the thing that I did, I checked out mentally. Because I was already on autopilot. That's what a lot of people don't know at a job. Like, technically, once you learn how to do your job, you're on autopilot.
Yeah. You have to work to stay present.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it becomes like more focused to be like, oh, I'm here. Oh, I got to do this. That's when you get the stresses. You're like, but if you actually just checked out mentally, your body, you would still actually perform almost the same way. And that's what's actually needed to be able to transition is, okay, that's how I tell people, my perspective is like, all right, well, listen, you got to be at the job for X amount of time. That's fine. But don't give it an ounce of mental energy. Don't be upset with what your coworker said or what the boss did or all the stuff.
Do your job to the best and keep it pushing.
And then go home and then start to work on that other part of your life, finding the other job. So, right, it all lined up for you. It all came, you found
Once
it.
I got clear, as soon, I'm telling you, like, it was so eerie that to the point of where I was questioning it. I remember going to my wife being like, this checks every box. Small company, but not too small. Right? Like, not something I got to worry about. Like, hey, do we really got to turn the light off? Like, you know what I mean? Like, bro, you hit the lights hard up in here, right? Like, like small. But then it was like the leadership. I said I needed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The leader, exactly that. Like, I'm talking about like eerie. Wow. Like, I wrote it and put it up, and it's like, how somebody has sketched something. It's like, that's that person, right? To the environment, the culture, right? When I went in to kind of fill it out, to the network that they're a part of that supports it, being able to meet with millionaires before I even got the job that are like, we invest in you. Like, I had more people in the last month ask me, so how do you want your life to end? Like, how do you, like, where you want to be? Like, do you really want to be working? Like, literally, people are asking me, I'm in the job. Like, do you really want to be working? Like, or do you want to like get your cash out? Like, you want to get that big payday. Essentially, they're trying to see, are you like me?
Right.
Because I got the $60 million cash out. Right. Like, you know what I mean? And now I'm working and I'm building, I'm investing, right? Like, they put me up on game on a good investment too. Like, like, this is the group of people. And then the work that I do has meaning. Like, not saying that the work I had before didn't. However, I'm literally working on projects and different things that I'm seeing that I'm working on, like, mentally right now, because I'm just started. But it's like, I can see everything that I do and how it directly impacts everything.
That's important.
And now that's an entrepreneur. I am literally the definition of an entrepreneur right now. Like, this is it. Like, I didn't need to work my way to it. Like, my CEO, who's going to be on the podcast soon, right? He agreed to coming on, right? Like, such a cool guy. Look at that. He's ready to come on the podcast, right? And talk about, like, hey, what you do affects, like, my family. Like, I'm trusting you literally with my family right now. The decisions you make, the trust I put into you, how you lead your group of people, how you function with the other departments. Like, every single thing that I do literally is a part of everything. If I screw this up, like, I can literally tank a company. Yeah. Like, that's how close it is right now. I don't think it's that bad, but I'm just using, you know what I mean? He'll shut it down before that, but think about that.
Having the control, coming from a big machine, right? You're a cog in the wheel. You're just $1 billion company. You're just process. You're just a number, right? They'll replace you in a second. Replace you in a half a second, right? Everything's fine, just moving. To going to a place where your decisions impact the outcome of the bottom line, for sure. Like absolutely. Yeah, like there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
It went from 5% of the company, a multi-billion-dollar company. So that's not like a little bit, but to 50%. Like, that's different. Where your department, it represents 50% of the revenue or whatever number. It's probably a little bit less because of the department, but that's a lot.
It is, but that's what you needed, right? And again,
yes,
everyone listening to this, like, we're highlighting T's story, one, because it's just it's just super courageous, bro. Like, it's just a matter of like,
Yeah.
I wasn't happy here, even though to the normal employee,
I checked almost every box on
box
American Dream.
that everybody's
Almost
trying to get to.
like
Yeah.
I checked 75% of the boxes.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest. I checked 75% of the boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And still got to that place, had the courage to say, I don't think this is me. I think I want to go this direction. Had the courage to step out of your comfort zone. Because like you said, you were even working with people that have just been on cruise control for 10 years. And it's great. They pull in their 6 figures. Life is cushy or whatever the case is. But like, right, they're on cruise control.
Yeah.
So that's not the way that you necessarily wanted to go. Now you can come over. You found the leadership, right? By the way, this is also a story of the power of knowing what you want.
Yes.
The power of really like taking the time to say like, this is what I want. Because you hit the nail on the head. And, you know, we say this all the time. Most people say what they don't want.
Yep.
This is just an experiment. I've had people do this before. If you go out and just ask the next 15 people that you see, 20 people in a conversation, what is it that you want out of life? Like, what's the next 5 years look like? What do you want out of your job? You know, what do you want out of work? What do you want out of money? Just ask them anything about what they want in the future. And often, I'm probably going to say 90% of the time, you're going to hear people, the first thing they say is something they don't want.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. So what actually happens is we get more of the things we don't want.
Because that's what you focus.
Because that's what we focus on, right?
Yeah.
So this is a power in your story of saying, nah, first off, let me assess who I am. Mm-hmm. What is it that I really am feeling and what I really want? Yeah. And once I start, like you said, you got clarity on that, you start writing these things down. By some magic of the universe, also known as God, right? Like, just drops it in your lap because this is what you asked for.
Completely different let me be clear with y'all too, because that's important. Because people are like, I don't want to switch industries. I don't know. Completely different industry, no experience whatsoever. It's actually a competency that I completely do not have. As far as the technical side of things of it. Right. So anybody that's like, oh, you just went from one job to the next. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but I wanted to make sure, like, completely different industry. So people are like, I don't know what I could do. I had somebody come to me knowing I'm in a different industry, set it up front, and they were like, we're looking for the right person. And I said, I'm looking for the right company. And then boom.
That's even more powerful of a point. Right? Like, because again, I see it all the time. I know you see it. People get stuck in their industry.
Yes.
They get stuck in like, I just want this in this company or in healthcare, in this, like in that industry. And what they fail to remember is that they have a skill set. They have competencies. They have things that they've picked up that will translate into another industry.
Yeah.
But they don't know what they want oftentimes. They don't know what they're going after. They don't know again, you figured out that it's people for you. It's impact for you. That's what you figured out about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's purpose. It gotta be bigger. You gotta be able to, I want to go make this. I want to now, let's create the $1 billion company and see how it goes. Right. And then try to eliminate all the challenges that I saw. Mm-hmm. Right. Try to prove it wrong. Like, that's exciting.
That's it. That's
exciting for me. But I had to know. And I want to also say something. You made a good point of, once you identify your skills, being able to articulate those transferable skills into different arenas of life. Like you said, some people get stuck in, well, I was a nurse for 20 years. Right, okay. Exactly. So how can I go be an executive at Kinko's, or is there Kinko's still? I don't know, like FedEx, whatever. FedEx. Right? I don't know why Kinko's came to mind, right? But I can't. I've been a nurse, okay, or even like us. I was a cook,
right?
I worked in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Well, there's skills that you develop that are core skills that translate. Now, I will say, I got some help with this through utilizing some of the resources that were there, of understanding how to take those and transfer them to other places. And that's a conversation that I think that could be another episode of how to assess and how to pick those core things out that translate. Even moms that are stay-at-home moms that think they got to go back and start all over again because they've been out of the workforce. Last time I checked, raising a kid was a lot more difficult and took a lot more time than 35 to 45 to 38 hours at Walmart.
Yep.
Or wherever, right? Like those are transferable skills, but you got to be able to first figure out what you want, assess what you have, and then be able to articulate that and how that can transfer and add value to somebody else, regardless of industry. And like Chris said, God has a special way of matching those things up, even when it don't look like they should be matched up. I went from the auto world. Most of my career has been in the auto industry, like 90% of my career. And I went into now the home services, where I'm in a world of plumbing, HVAC, electrical, the trades. People that don't go to college, from a world of you have to go to college, right? White collar, blue collar. And it's a perfect match. So anybody out there, I know we want to wrap this up, but anybody out there that's thinking about changing a job, changing a business, right? This can go entrepreneur too, right? Like you can be running one business and you got to say, you know what? This ain't it no more. I can switch businesses. I don't have to even stay in the same industry. Open your mind up to what you want, assess it, but at the end of the day, understand the game that's being played in the industry and everything else. Even in my thing now, as much as I love it, there's a game behind the game. And the good thing that I had though is, and I hope you get this too, my boss was upfront about the game.
Sure. And it's a game that I'm sure you prefer to play. You pick the game that you want to play, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That's it. And I think, one, that's a great way to end this, because you summed up everything that we just talked about, that are like the valuable points that people that are listening should be able to take away from this, specifically understanding what you want, knowing that you're playing a game. So it's your decision to play that game or not. Don't complain about how your company works or how the boss is or how, like, just understand that's the game. You don't want to play the game, go somewhere else, play a different game.
Deuce it.
Yeah,
Deuce it.
Play a different game. Right. And I know I might make that sound simple, but just like T said, you got to have courage. You got to have courage to step out of your comfort zone. You got to have, courage to say, this doesn't fulfill me. This isn't the game I want to play. Yeah, I don't know the game I want to play, but I know it's not this one. So I'm going to go over somewhere else and figure that out.
Let me figure it out.
That's it.
And this is why, and I'll leave this nugget if people are frustrated. People, they did a study, and somebody's going to correct me on it, but I'm going to try my best to remember it. People that stayed on their job for 10 years straight made 50% less than people who changed their job every 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
So you staying on one job for, let's say, 10 years, I think it was 10 or 20, but somebody else bounced around 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe a 1 in there. They actually make on average 50% more than the person who just stays on one for the long haul. People, when you recognize your skill and get more clear and want to move, other people value it, and they know to get it, they got to pay for it. That's how you get those 20, 30, 40, 50% jumps. I got to jump. I got a nice jump, and I was doing good. And I got to jump. And people are like, hold up, but you went to a smaller company, got to jump. Yes, because the value was there. They saw my value. I articulated my value. I saw the value in them. I was all in on them. We made it happen. So you gotta be willing to change. And that's not to say the people that's gonna do 10 and stay, that's cool. Just know that playing that game, you might make a whole lot less money. And if money's not your thing, you're good. That's all we're saying. Just be good and understand. But if it is, money is a big factor for you, taking care of your family in different kind of ways, you got to consider. And sometimes that jump may not even be a new company. That can be a different department too. So I want to put that out there. If your company's big enough where you can move, like I tried to move, my company was big enough before, but to move to literally move, physically move, it wasn't gonna make sense. So I think that'll be it, because I can keep going on, but we just want to make a special episode for you guys of big change in my life. I'm being open and transparent about it. If you have more questions, you hit me up in the DM, find me. I've helped a lot of my people transition where they were my people and I helped them. I had one guy come to me and was like, man, after that speech you gave, I knew I couldn't work here no more. I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you inspired me. I've always wanted to do real estate and I was just too nervous. And I kept this safe job working for you. And I'm inspired now. And I was like, damn. But what do you need from me? Let me help you out. I did my job. So that's it. I'll leave it there. I think that was a good story to end it on.
I do too, man. And again, to everybody that's listening, we just want to be able to give you, right, like these nuggets. T has a bunch of nuggets, but again, I highlighted some of the things, the intangibles that, he might not say or see, but like for sure, it takes courage to be able to step out of your comfort zone. Doesn't matter what job you have. Once it gets on autopilot and you are good at what you do, it's very hard to leave it. It's very hard to then go to a different industry. So again, kudos to you, bro, for being able to do that. And for people that are listening, right? Like that's a prerequisite. You got to have the courage. You got to be able to step out of your comfort zone. But again, the things that he did before that, he was intentional. He set his intentions. He knew exactly what he wanted. This is what I'm looking for. He took his time. He didn't start underperforming at work. He just kind of said, okay, well, I'm gonna start thinking about some other things. He got locked in, tapped into who he is and what he wanted to give and how he wanted to maneuver in life. All of those things are so important, guys. They're just incredibly important. So for everybody that's listening, take heed to this episode. We wanted to make sure that we were giving you personal value, because even though we pontificate on ideas and go into theory and talk all this stuff that we see, like we're living our lives as well. We're making decisions on a day-to-day basis. And, after a phone call that T and I had, I was like, man, we need to talk about this because it's important, because there's people out there. I know there's people listening right now that are contemplating leaving the job because either A, they figured out the game and they don't like it, right? Yeah. Or they just, they're trying to scratch this itch on this side. Maybe they want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe they want to be a number two, right? Yeah. Maybe they want to be next. Maybe they don't want to be a full entrepreneur where they run a company and have all the responsibility, but maybe they just want to be on a 10-person team so they can really make impact and effect. But you got to have courage to step out, to go find the entrepreneur that you could work for, right? To go be the number two. How do you add value? Let me give you guys this from the entrepreneur side, and we will wrap this up. If you ever think about going to work for an entrepreneur, the only thing you better be thinking about is how are you bringing him or her value? That's the only thing we want to know.
That's the game I play now.
If you're gonna come work you're gonna come work with me, that's great. I'd love, but how do you make this better? How do you make me better? How do you take something off my plate? How do you make the organization better? That's all I want to know, right? Yep. And talk to any big leaders, any success. We don't care about degrees. I don't care what industry you came from. I don't care none of that stuff.
Yep.
How are you helping me? How are you adding value? If you can help me, then you might have a spot on this side. T found somebody that it was looking for the exact same thing. He knew the value he brought to it. He could articulate that value. Match made in heaven. Now he's in a brand new position where he's doing things that's really impacting the bottom line. Like he said, 50% of the company approximately is probably what he's going to oversee. That's a big responsibility, right? Yeah. But he already knew what he wanted. He was up for the challenge. So hit us up, guys. Reach out, DMT, right? Let them know, hey, man, congratulations on the new position, but what should I do, right? We're here to continue to give you value. We're going to, make this thing happen because we want to see all you guys win. So until next week, we're going to sign off for another Perspective podcast. Give them the bang, bang.
Baby! You saw I was waiting for it.
He was loading up, getting ready for that bang, bang. This is going to be a special moment, guys. We're going to figure out how to monetize this thing, this bang, bang. But absolutely, guys, thanks for checking in this week. We love you. We appreciate you guys. God bless you. Until next week, we're signing off. Take care.
Peace.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Perspective Podcast. We hope this conversation made you think a bit deeper, gain some insight, or even possibly even gain a brand new perspective. If you did enjoy it, do us a favor, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Anchor, or anywhere else you stream. Leave a review to help more people experience these conversations and potentially change their perspective as well. And lastly, as always, T and I want you to connect with us. So follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. You can find us just by using our names. And there we get a chance to hear your perspective. Until next time, God bless.